I want to say in the last video I'm going to make, which obviously if I if I've taken the time to edit and then upload everything, you will see what I'm talking about. The last video that I want to really make are about the accessories. I've talked about the Macs, I've talked about the iPads, I talked about the iPhone, but there are companion devices that we can also call accessories. So the Apple Watch. I have owned, technically, I think 4 Apple Watches. I bought one for my mom as well. Um, and right now I don't own any. And my mom still has hers. She never uses it. I think she uses it a little bit, but not much. Not for the $400 I paid for it. So needless to say, I will not be buying her another smartwatch. But looking at what Apple has to offer, and we're just talking about the main 3. There's some other ones on there. The Apple Watch Ultra, the Apple Watch Series 8, and the Apple Watch SE. I'm not going to go into the specs differences. If you want to, please go to the Apple's website so you can do the comparisons and such. But the Apple Watch Ultra obviously was geared towards those professional, real, explorers, divers, hikers, whatever. For $800, if you want to buy an Apple Watch Ultra, by all means, go ahead. I mean, it looks like it's an okay device. I'm not going to knock it since I have zero experience with it, with the exception of just watching reviewers talk about it. Is it something that I would buy even if I had an iPhone? Probably not, but it wasn't made for me. So I'm not going to knock it. I just know it wasn't made for me. It wasn't made for most people. I will say, in my opinion, it's nice when an accessory you have isn't locked to a particular ecosystem. So if you are truly that explorer and you need this type of watch to do something, I would imagine that there are Garmin's and other brands that I know I'm not familiar with that give you the same versatility that this Apple Watch gives, and you can use it with other platforms, mainly Android, or just maybe as a standalone watch. Like with these Apple Watches, you need an iPhone to even set up the watch. So yeah, if you're that person, maybe it's the right watch for you. The Apple Watch Series 8. From everything that I've seen online, it's just kind of a repackaged Series 7. I mean, again, not going to go into extreme detail about it because it's another thing that's not for me. If I still had an iPhone and I was in the market for a new watch, would I consider the Apple Watch Series 8? I would. I can confidently say that I would. If I could find it for a decent price, most likely used, used, I would consider it because if that's the watch that probably most people are going to buy, just the regular watch. Because they also have the Apple Watch SE, which is a crippled Apple Watch. I mean, I think it's missing some sensors and the ability to do maybe like the slower refresh rate or whatever. And then it just starts at just spend another $100, $130, whatever the difference is between that and the base model Apple Watch Series 8, and get a possibly perceivably better watch. So all in all, I mean, yeah, the landscape of the Apple Watch seems to be relatively healthy. As I said before, I'm using an Android device, so I can't even use an Apple Watch. I no longer even own an iPhone, so I couldn't even set one up if I wanted to. But unlike the other products or the other products that I've talked about, I'd say, like talking about the iPhone, I don't really have strong feelings against I actually have strong feelings against the iPhone, but that's not for the purposes of the video I made. But I don't have strong feelings for or against the Apple Watch. Like I said, I've owned 4 of them, and when I used them, I liked them. I really did. It was a nice companion device to the phone. Whether it was using Apple Pay to just tap to do that, whether it was the convenience of receiving notifications. In fact, one thing I noticed for sure is that I was checking my phone less, because I knew that, if my watch is vibrating, I'm not getting any notifications. Now, granted, I can do that with a Fitbit or, some other smartwatch. I did not need specifically an Apple Watch to do that, but it was a nice companion device to go along with the iPhone. Battery life was pretty good. At some point, I was putting music and podcast on the Apple Watch, so when I was walking around the track, I didn't have to take my phone with me. I was able to just listen to music directly off the Apple Watch. There were some storage limitations on it, so that was kind of funky. That I think like 8 gigs of whatever amount of storage you had on the phone you could put media on, which was kind of weird. I mean, it makes sense. You don't want media taking up too much space, and you not be able to install additional updates or whatever Apple is reserving storage for, whatever. But I liked it. Like I think I said, the battery life was pretty good. I did not take the time to buy third-party wristbands, but I know they exist. So if you don't like what comes in the box, third-party wristbands are available. As I said, I used it when I was walking around the track, so GPS, from what I saw, was pretty accurate. Um, I will say, and I think other people have pointed this out too, that when you have the little achievements in the little fitness stuff, excuse me, some of those things aren't realistic, but you still think that you want to achieve them. So it's like, oh, going, 40 straight days without missing, your without 40 straight days of closing your activity rings or something. It's just like it's a lot, and I think some of them were longer than 40 days. Like they were, regardless of what the actual activity was, the amount of time that would be required to complete that task. It was like, this is not an achievable goal, but I'm still going to try to do it, which potentially leads to unhealthy behaviors. But aside from that, overall, it was a pretty good experience. I will say, and this definitely, I don't know if it's a knock on the Apple Watch or if it's a knock on the cell phone service providers, but I wanted to be able to set up a truly standalone Apple Watch. Granted, I know I would have needed just an iPhone to set it up, but in terms of connectivity, I did not want to have an iPhone at all. I wanted to have its own phone number, and I would have been able to stream music to it when I'm walking around the track instead of having to transfer music to it from a phone. And going through that process was a lot harder than it needed to be. Long story short, it didn't work the way that I wanted to, but if I could summarize the experience, first of all, I'm a prepaid customer. At least the last time I checked, the only prepaid company that allows you to use cellular with the Apple Watch was Visible, which is, I think, a company that Verizon owns. And at that point, I was like, well, I don't want to have to pay, I think it was like $40 a month to activate a Visible line and then have cellular. And in fact, I'm mixing up two different stories now that I'm thinking about it. So originally, yeah, I did want just a standalone Apple Watch, but in order to do that, it would have had to been a postpaid line, and I didn't really want a postpaid line, but I signed up for one. And at the end of the day, the standalone Apple Watch is really only allowed if you set it up as, well, I forget the exact name, but it's, essentially if you're a parent setting up an Apple Watch for a child, or if you're an adult setting up an Apple Watch for maybe your senior citizen age parents or somebody who you need to monitor. That's the only way that the watch becomes standalone. And I was like, well, this isn't what I want. Because when it's like that and it's not tied to an iPhone, then you end up pretty much not being able to do anything with it. I don't remember all of the things that got nixed, but at that point I felt like this is an absolutely useless piece of trash. So I'm not going to do this. And fortunately, I canceled my postpaid line, I think like the same day that I activated it. So there weren't any fees or charges. And I was just like, good. Woo, okay. So that was attempting to do it postpaid because I'm a prepaid customer. So I was like, all right, well, I'll do the postpaid just for the watch. But as a standalone device, it's pretty much useless, at least for what I wanted to do as an adult, as a capable adult. So I said, well, what prepaid options exist? And the only prepaid option was Visible, as I mentioned, a Verizon company. And at that point, I was like, well, I'm satisfied with what I'm paying as a prepaid customer at T-Mobile. I don't want to pay more money just so I can use this Apple Watch. And I did start the little free trial, but or at least I attempted to start the free trial, but something went wrong while I was going through the setup process. And customer service at that particular time was helpful. They did something on the back end. It wasn't immediate, so he said, "Okay, we'll try again. Try again. In a little while." And I think they did send like a follow-up email or something, letting me know that I could go forward and attempt to set up the phone. Set up my phone line, and then I would have set up the Apple Watch with that. But I ended up not doing it because at that point I was just like, even if it is like a free 15-day trial, I'm not going to spend more money just so that way I can use this Apple Watch. So I never went forward with it. In my opinion, I think they need to figure out a better way to do that, because it would be nice to have a truly standalone Apple Watch. And how would either Apple or the cell phone service providers achieve that? It's probably easier than I could think right now, because that wasn't the point of me talking about all this stuff. But now that I'm thinking about it, I'm sure there's a simple way to do it. Yes, it needs to be tied to an iPhone, and even if I just have a simple iPhone right here with no SIM card in it, and it's connected to the internet. I pair the Apple Watch to the iPhone, but the iPhone doesn't have a SIM card. The Apple Watch has its own phone number tied to it. Everything essentially, it would be the Apple Watch is the main device, and the iPhone is just sitting at home connected to Wi-Fi all day. I think I'd be okay with that. But yeah, it's more complicated than it needs to be. Obviously, these companies want us to be postpaid customers, so they're going to make a feature like that not as easy as it should be. I mean, if there's a SIM card in it, why can't you just treat this like a phone, give it a phone number, and allow me to move on with life? But at the same time, I don't think Apple's iOS operating system allows it to work that way either, because they want it to be the companion device to the phone, not the phone being the companion device to the watch. So whatever. Hope that didn't go over your head. But all that to say, I never got the watch to do what I wanted to do, and I wasn't about to pay postpaid prices to get there. Nor did I want to change from my current T-Mobile plan to Visible to also pay more money, not as much as postpaid. And then of course the postpaid Apple Watch standalone wasn't what I wanted to be either. So yeah, in my opinion, it's a good. I guess in summary, the Apple Watch is a good device, but yeah, it's not for me. Obviously since I don't have an iPhone. But if you have an iPhone, yeah, I think it's because of Apple's own doing. It's probably the best smartwatch you can get for the iPhone. But of course, for Android folks, yeah, you'll find something else. And I'm done talking about Apple Watches. And the other thing that I would mention are AirPods. Never owned a pair, so I can't speak too definitively about them. But from everything that I've seen online, people seem to love them. I've made a video, haven't edited or uploaded it yet, but essentially I was talking about my Bluetooth configuration right now. So these are EarPods, so the wired Apple headphones that used to come with the phone, so a 3.5mm jack. And for younger folks, they're probably like, oh, those just like AirPods with wires, coming out of them. Yeah, and I think even the newest regular AirPods look more like the AirPods Pro now. So this too is going to become an antiquated form factor. But what I really like about these is how comfortable they fit in the ear. Like, they're loose. There's no active noise cancellation or noise isolation. So a lot of noise comes in, but usually when I'm using these, I'm not in the most loud environment, so it's okay. And then what I do, again, this is my Bluetooth experience, because you're looking at this, you're like, well, this is a wire. This is the FiO BTR3, and essentially it's a Bluetooth transceiver. On the bottom, we have a USB-C port for charging, and a 3.5mm port for me to plug this into. And at this point, this connects to whatever device I need to listen to. So whether it's right now I'm just really using this to connect to an Apple TV that's out in the living room. But if I need to connect it to something else and I want to use these headphones, and the device that I want to connect to doesn't have a headphone jack, like many modern day smartphones or that Apple TV, it's a nice little in between. And I know that's a lot to have. People are like, well, this is cumbersome, and then also having this little thing is much. If I just have two little earbuds that I pop into my ears and I put them in the case when I'm using them, the case charges the buds, and then I plug in the case to charge the case. I get it. It's not for everybody, and I don't talk on the phone using this configuration. This is literally just watching video out in the living room. And in fact, yesterday I actually connected it directly to the television, not to the Apple TV. So again, I don't want to say that's a separate use case, because it's pretty much the same use case. But I was watching a Blu-ray disc, not the Apple TV, so I'm happy that the television itself had a Bluetooth connection. And who knows, even the Blu-ray player might have a Bluetooth connection that I could have connected this directly to the Blu-ray player. So I will say, when it comes to AirPods, I will probably forever be upset that Apple got rid of the headphone jack and then sold us a solution to the problem that they caused. But people seem to like them. So if you want some AirPods, go buy them. I will say I'm pretty sure I talked my cousin out of buying some. He has an iPhone 13 maybe, and he was using the wired headphones, and of course his have the lightning end on the bottom. So instead of the 3.5 millimeter jack, there's a lightning port or a lightning tip right there. But his went out, and he was considering buying AirPods, and I was like, I mean, they're fine devices, but they're expensive. People lose them. There's a battery in there, so you don't have to replace that. Well, you can't replace the battery, but the life of the battery is going to slowly degrade. And for $20, which brand new on Amazon and Apple's website, you can still buy those wired headphones, which at this point should be a lot cheaper than that, but Apple just keeps them around, and they're not going to get cheaper there. He bought some, and he says they work flawlessly, as they should, because it's just metal and whatever rubber coating is on this, and hopefully he'll continue using those for the next however many years, because the ones that went out did not come in his newest phone, because Apple no longer includes them in the box. So they lasted for a while, and I've had these for 5, maybe 6 years now, and I just bought this earlier, well, back in 2022. So I haven't had this for too long, but I think I paid maybe $30 for this, and yeah, it's a great device for what I need it to be. So in the landscape of AirPods, yeah, they seem to be cool. Pros, regulars, the Max, definitely that's for a specific group of people. People who want those AirPod Maxes, and I think that's it. HomePod still exists. At some point I did have the regular OG HomePod, and I will say that was probably one Apple device that truly blew my mind. That thing was amazing. It's unfortunate that they don't make it anymore. Apple should have priced it differently. They didn't. They should have made it so that you could have, I think you could natively play Apple Music on it, but you had to AirPlay Spotify or something else. Obviously, AirPlay doesn't work unless you're using another Apple device. So in that case, it's limited. So a bunch of things that Apple did that you would expect Apple to do, but those things made the HomePod a less successful device than it should have been. HomePod Minis seem to be doing okay, but that's it. All right, battery life on this thing is almost up. I think it's time for me to shut up. With that being said, Apple Watches seem to be cool. AirPods seem to be cool. If you're in the Apple ecosystem and you need some accessories, give them a try.